Welcome to Foxfire Focus, the podcast that brings clarity and insight to the industry's most relevant issues. Foxfire's mission is to provide the best service experience in eye care. So, we hope you enjoy what you're about to hear and that this information provides some perspective on the exciting opportunities facing our profession. For more information about Foxfire, please visit us at foxfiresg.com. Foxfire, taking care of your practice so you can manage your patients.
Hello and welcome to Foxfire Focus, a podcast about eye care and the business of eye care. Today, my guest is one of the most recognizable faces in eye care, Rick Weisbarth. Welcome, Rick.
Thank you for having me, Tim.
Rick has just completed an amazing tenure in the eye care world, retiring as Vice President of Professional Affairs for Alcon. Has seen a lot of changes in the industry over really 42, 43 years of work since he graduated from the Ohio State School of Optometry in 1980. Rick and I met in 1980 at UAB. He was the first cornea and contact lens resident at UAB. That had to be, I think, some of the golden years of education there at UAB.
That was a wonderful experience for me, Tim.
Yeah, you mentioned a couple of names earlier that I think a lot of people will recognize that were in charge of the residency program.
Yeah, John Amos and Jimmy Bartlett were in charge of the residency program, and then I worked most closely with Norm Leach, who was head of the contact lens program.
Yeah. There were 5 residents at the time. Brian Denbesti, I think, was one of your co-residents. That name may be recognizable. Lenny Thirstwell, great clinicians, wonderful people. It was just a great time to get an education at UAB. Larry Alexander was there. Man, what a great mind and a good faculty. So in your residency, you were not only doing some clinical care, but you were exposed to clinical research. What did that do to you?
Yeah, I've had the opportunity to participate in a couple of clinical studies along with Norm, and it really piqued my interest in doing research. I had really not done any during my education at Ohio State, and it opened up my eyes to the possibilities of doing something different with my optometric degree. So that really opened up my interest in getting involved in industry.
So upon your completion, you went then to what was SIBA, is that correct?
Actually, I had applied at a number of different companies and there were no openings within the contact lens industry. So I actually went into a private practice in Tampa following the residency program. But it was short-lived because in January of 1982, I actually received a piece of mail via forwarded mail that said that SIBA had an opportunity. At the same time, I had an offer from UAB to join faculty, and I had an offer from Joe Barr to join him at Dow Corning in Midland, Michigan. Wow. So I came home one day and said to my wife, I think we're leaving Tampa. Where do you want to go? And we ended up choosing Atlanta, Georgia, and I started my career with SIBA Vision in January of 1982.
That was out in the Johns Creek area. Is that correct?
Actually, Johns Creek came later. It was at 2910 Amweiler Court in the beginning, which was in Norcross, Georgia, just north of the perimeter. And then as the company grew, Johns Creek came years later and is where the Alcon research and development facility and manufacturing site are still located today.
Yeah. So I know this is hard for people to remember or even imagine if you haven't been in the industry for a while, but you mentioned the little glass vials and the single-use contact lenses. In your tenure, you've seen extended wear, multiple use, multi-packs, all manner of technologies being developed. and SIBA, Alcon, Novartis, always at the forefront of that kind of leadership. So what do you think, as you look back, are some of the most remarkable things that have changed since that 1981 graduation point?
Yeah, I think probably some of the biggest changes in the contact lens industry, Tim, have been due to technology, as you mentioned. When we were in school, it was all about taking a patient from hard lenses, PMMA lenses, into gas permeable,
right,
or into soft lenses. And at the time, all soft lenses were in glass vials with an aluminum crimp cap on top, which meant that after a trial fitting, you had to clean and disinfect those lenses, which was just our technicians' nightmare. It was their least favorite thing to do. And then as technology developed, there were, advances to frequent replacement and ultimately daily disposables. I remember very vividly, there was a company in Denmark called Dana Lens, and they had produced a new product using molding technology, because prior to that, all soft lenses were lathe cut. And we received a package in the mail, just like all the other contact lens companies did. And the task was to evaluate whether or not our company was interested in the product. So the very first thing you do in that type of situation is you open up the box and you start to inspect the lenses. Well, the box was a little bit soggy because some of the lenses, which were in foil packs with an aluminum lid, had leaked in the transport from Europe over to the United States. So as we opened up some of the products and put them on a large microscope to look at the quality of the lens, we noticed they had kind of a scalloped edge, much like you would get from taking a cookie cutter.
Mm-hmm.
And we said, oh my gosh, that is not going to be very comfortable when the patient puts that on the eye. And because of the irregularities in the circumference of the lens. And sure enough, we put them on some subjects who were employees or family members of employees. And they were like, get this thing out. It hurts like crazy. So writing up the report on that evaluation was pretty easy. And the report basically said, not ready for prime time. Well, that was something that SIBA Vision passed on, but there was a company a little bit south of us in Florida called Vistacon, and they found the same thing, but what they had the vision to do was to take that molding technology and refine it. And that's what ultimately led to the age of disposable lenses. It was the vision to mass produce lenses using technology to do it. Prior to that, when you and I were at UAB, I can remember dreadfully a patient coming in who had been successfully fit by one of the colleagues who preceded us. And they'd say, I lost or tore a lens. And we were like, oh no, a -3. We're going to have to order 3 -3s and hope with fingers crossed that one of them will perform like the lens they previously had.
Yeah,
remember those days?
All over the cornea, decentering up under the lid and off to the temporal side is.
Oh, exactly. And even if it was a good fit, the patient may say, I can't see out of it. It's like, but it's labeled a -3. So yeah, technology has really improved that. And certainly one of the big things that I've learned in industry is how important the quality of that product is. Because even with the technology nowadays, there still are things that can go wrong that can affect the optics of the lens, that can affect the movement of the lens. So having a quality department constantly check and make sure that things are going according to plan is key.
Yes.
And, we see the bigger companies really have quality programs in place, and very rarely do you have a problem. But as you see startup companies or some of the companies that occur from overseas, you do see some of those quality problems reoccur in the marketplace.
Rick, you have served in many, many capacities in our profession and in the industry. advisory councils, probably too numerous to list, and on different boards. And some of your work particularly has been in the National Academies of Practice in Optometry. You're recently the president. For those unfamiliar with that organization, tell us a little bit about it.
Sure, be happy to, Tim. So the National Academies of Practice is an organization that is interprofessional in nature. Currently, there are 15 different healthcare professions involved, optometry being one of them. It started over 40 years ago when a psychologist named Nichols was at a meeting in D.C. on something related to Medicare, Medicaid. And what he found was that even though all healthcare professionals have the patient at the center of everything they do, they weren't aligned in how they were addressing Congress and looking at matters of healthcare and wellness. So he had this idea to create an organization called the National Academies of Practice, which would bring together the different healthcare professions so that they could talk about how to put the patient at the center of the hub and work together. And I got involved in the optometry group. I was inducted in 2004. You have to be recommended by a peer, and there's certain criteria that you have to meet. When the organization originally started, there could be only 100 in each of the different professions. Over time, that cap was raised to 150, then 250, and now there is no upper limit. But when one does become involved in the National Academies of Practice, it's a real opportunity to learn about the different healthcare professions. So dentistry, medicine, nursing, social work, occupational therapy. The most recent group to join is respiratory care, which is really important, especially after everything we witnessed with COVID and the pandemic. But the key is really learning how to work interprofessionally. And it was really an eye-opening experience for me, because I have to admit that while I had a great education, the most interprofessional thing I ever did was write a referral letter. I never really worked closely with the other professions. And a big part of that is learning what the other professions can do for our patients. So one of the things that I've taken pride in is really educating our colleagues in other healthcare professions about what optometry is all about and what we do on a day in and day out basis to take care of our patients, not only from a refractive standpoint, but from an overall health standpoint. And one of the things that physicians and nurses are amazed at is the statistic that there are over 275 systemic conditions that have ocular manifestations. People have no clue that that exists. I'm embarrassed to tell our colleagues that most healthcare professionals don't know the difference between a OD and an ophthalmologist. So being able to advocate and educate healthcare professionals about what we do and the role that we play in patient care has really been fascinating to me.
Excellent. So elevating the profession through that arm of involvement. Now, the other arm of your involvement has been with the Academy, the American Academy of Optometry, recently, again, as president. So, and a diplomate of the contact lens section there.
Yes, that I have to admit has been one of my proud accomplishments over the years. I became interested in the Academy when I was at UAB. Brad Wild, who was the dean at the school after Hank Peters, was involved in the Academy. He was actually an Academy president. And one of the things that he encouraged all of the students and residents to do was to get involved in the profession upon completion of our degrees. So I had the opportunity to attend my very first Academy meeting while I was a resident at UAB. It was December of 1980. The meeting was in Chicago at the Drake Hotel, which is where they had the Academy meeting for years prior. And it's a fascinating story, Tim, because we were told as residents that we could go, but we were only given a very small stipend.
Yes.
And back in those days, money was a little bit tight coming out of our degree programs and into residency. I was telling one of my patients one day about it, and she said, "Oh, I have a boyfriend who has family in Chicago, and he flies there on a frequent basis. Would you like me to see if he would be happening to be going at the time of your meeting?" And as it turns out, we all piled into his small plane. I sat in the co-pilot seat, and we flew from Birmingham to Chicago. What a great experience. It was only my second time ever on a plane. My first time was when I flew from commercial from Columbus, Ohio to Birmingham, Alabama to interview for the residency program.
Wow.
So what an experience it was. And I became very interested in the Academy, and over time got involved in volunteer work, and ultimately was tricked into running for a position on the board. And it was just a fantastic experience.
Well, that's great. What a great story. Now, of course, your opportunity to contribute to the profession hasn't ceased just because you've stepped back from your Alcon role. Matter of fact, you still have an Alcon role, which is the Children's Vision Center. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. So through the Alcon Foundation, we were given a charge about 2.5 years ago to try to address some of the needs of the children in Fort Worth. For a number of years now, Alcon volunteers conduct vision screenings on the elementary school children in Fort Worth. There's 35,000 from pre-K to grade 5. And as a result of doing those vision screenings, what they found is that there was a failure rate of about 20%. The sad part is that the children who failed those vision screenings didn't have anywhere to go. A statistic that just is mind-boggling is there's roughly 80 elementary schools here in the Fort Worth School District.
Wow.
76 of the 80 are Title I schools. So the majority of those children, when they failed the vision screenings, had to find a practice that would accept Medicaid or whatever they were able to accept. And there just weren't many practices here that were willing to do that. Subsequently, these kids were failing the vision screenings, but weren't getting the appropriate follow-up care. So we were charged through the Alcon Foundation to find a solution. And what we came up with after looking at a number of different models was to open a clinic where these children who failed the vision screenings could receive complete comprehensive eye exams, and then, if needed, spectacle or refractive correction at no charge, courtesy of the Alcon Foundation.
Wow.
So we started that up, and we created a board of directors. It's a 501c3 legal entity. And currently, I'm involved as president of the board of directors for that venture. And we continue to learn something each and every day. You know, I never figured at this point in my career I'd be involved in opening up a practice, and it's been an interesting experience.
I'm sure it has. Well, my goodness, what a wonderful career! So many contributions to our profession. Thank you very much.
I'm happy to assist. And you know, one of the things that I learned at UAB through the great mentors like John Amos and Jimmy Bartlett and Larry Alexander and Norm Leach, all whom you mentioned before, Tim, is their mentorship and encouragement to get involved in the profession after we graduated. And I really took that to heart. We can make a difference each and every day. That's what a number of the forefathers and graduates before us have done. And I'd like to think that it's each one of our responsibilities to get involved in the profession in whatever way makes you comfortable. We're lucky with our degrees that we can do a variety of different things professionally, but there's also a number of different ways that we can give back, whether it's getting involved in the local community and educating people about what our profession does, getting involved in your local society or zone, getting involved at the state level, getting involved with AOA or the academy. There's just so many ways that we can give back. And, just like we want to do for our children, we want to create a better tomorrow than what we had. Not saying that what we had was bad,
Right.
but we got there because of what people before us did. And I'd like to think that it's all of our responsibility to create that better tomorrow for that next generation. They're so much better educated and so much better trained than we were just because of the advances. Every time I go back to Ohio State or UAB or any of the other schools or colleges, I'm amazed at what the students are learning nowadays versus what we thought was the best education ever when we went through.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. One of the things that I've learned through this children's vision clinic opening and exercise is what an important role we can play educating teachers and nurses. Oh my gosh, Tim, the number of teachers who've never had an eye exam, the number of nurses who don't know the difference between a vision screening and a comprehensive eye exam.
Right.
It's mind-boggling. At the end of the day, when I hear some of the stories, I go home and a triple isn't strong enough. Oh my gosh. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's a constant thing that I hear. Well, I have 20/20 vision. Well, how do you know that? Well, I had a vision screening when I was in 5th grade, and I've never gone for an eye exam ever since. Well, how old are you now? I'm 45. Are you having a little bit of trouble up close? Yeah, but I've gone to the dollar store and bought a pair of readers, and everything's good.
Yeah.
Or so they think.
Oh, isn't that the truth? Well, I can't think of a better advocate for our profession than you, Rick. And I really say that in all sincerity because you've used your position for the betterment of others. You've always lectured, presented yourself with humility and dignity. And I just really appreciate that.
Thanks, Tim. I appreciate those kind words.
And as I thought, you're one of the most recognizable faces in optometry for 3 reasons, perhaps. One is just exposure. 2 is you're usually the tallest guy in the room. And 3, you haven't changed at all. I think your mustache has a little white in it now, but that's all I can see that's a difference from 40 years ago when I first met you. I would recognize your hide tacked up on a barn wall somewhere.
Or in a post office.
Well, Rick, congratulations on completing one phase of your professional career, and I'm excited to hear what's going to happen in the next phases as you continue to advocate for optometry. So thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thanks again for the invitation.
Certainly. So Foxfire Focus with Rick Weisbarth. Next time you see him at a meeting, you won't miss him. Tallest guy in the room. He's going to look just like that. Maybe even taller now that he doesn't have as much weight on his shoulders. So thanks, Nick.
My pleasure.
All right.